We're finally fixing some long-standing issues from the past with relationships and money that have been holding us back and preventing us from moving into a new, different, and better experience of life we've been trying to get to for quite some time, especially since 2020. But even though that's the case, we're still feeling a little stuck when it comes to fixing these things, and like it's not fully resolving itself completely in the way that it needs, which I believe is because we're resisting following through all the way and on letting go of the things that we need to let go of so that we can begin again. And at this full moon in Gemini, of which this video is for, we're going to have to do that to finish fixing these things and to let go of anything from the past that no longer suits us so that we can move on. Hi, I'm your astrologer, Brittany of Ethereal Astrology. Today, you're watching your astrology horoscope for the collective for the full moon in Gemini, which occurs on Thursday, December 4th, 2025 at 6:14 p.m. Eastern Time or 3:14 p.m. Pacific Time. Now, before I get into the horoscope, to, of course, tell you more about this full moon and how it's going to play out, I did just want to let you know that I have a new course on how to read an astrological chart that is now available to help you do that. It makes reading a chart super simple. You do need a little bit of knowledge about astrology, but you don't really need that much. And it's going to break it down for you in very simple terms, very easy to understand using storytelling, which we're all very familiar with. To kind of help you put a chart together, because in my opinion, the hardest thing about reading a chart is not necessarily about reading the aspects, even though we're definitely going to cover that, and about knowing the astrological facts. It's really about figuring out how to put all the aspects together as a whole. And so that's what we're going to focus on there. If you're interested in that or want to learn more, please check that out. It's on my website, etherealastrology.com. Now, let's go ahead and let's hop into the horoscope. In order to get started, what I like to do first is, of course, place on the chart what it is that we're going to be talking about here so that you can see it and follow along with me. So I'm going to do that now. This video is for the full moon in Gemini. As a result, I have adjusted this chart accordingly. I know that because I've got the moon here in Gemini, making an exact opposition over here to the sun in Sagittarius. And when the moon opposes the sun, that is what is considered a full moon. And it's in Gemini because that's where the moon is in this arrangement. Okay, now, what is this about? Full moons are the halfway point of the lunar cycle, and as a result of that are all about stepping into things that we've been working towards for quite some time, to bring them to full moon, right? Fulfillment, completion, or to finish them in some way that's needed. Not only is it about us stepping into something or completing, finishing something, bringing it to its fullest form, but because that is when the moon is the brightest in the sky, to me, it usually brings something to light, perhaps that we did not see before, illuminates something that might be necessary for our growth. Not only that, but because it is a function of an opposition, to me, it also usually brings choices and decisions because it's hard to do two opposite things at once. Okay, now, what is it that we're trying to step into or do more fully or finish or get insights on or make decisions about? Well, that's going to be Gemini because that is where the moon is. What is Gemini all about? Well, sure, we typically know of Gemini as a lot about our communication, how we communicate with other people. So that's one of the things we're maybe trying to do more of. Or finish up doing, or make decisions about how to communicate and share information with people that we might need. Not only is Gemini about that, but it also has to do with our own mind, our own thoughts, our own ideas as well. So that's another thing. In addition to the communication, maybe that we're trying to step into or finish up, there's some sort of idea. Maybe there's some sort of idea or thought process in our own mind that we need to finish or release or let go of so that we can step into another one that might be better for us as well. Not only that, but I should also note too, kind of on that same note, Gemini is a lot about learning because it can be very curious. It likes to gather information, likes to gather facts, and can be about learning. But another thought I need to note is that, well, maybe I'll go to that in a second. So this is another theme that can be coming up at this full moon in Gemini, not only trying to finish communicating about something, which may require us to step into it and maybe finish an old thought process, old idea, so that we can step into different thought processes and ideas, but it might require us to finish maybe learning something that might be important to us so that we can go into another phase with it. Not only that, but I should also note too, back to the learning, even though Gemini is a lot about learning, it tends to be a sign that's more open-minded, being an air sign, being mutable, very flexible. Um, and that's more willing to kind of change its mind or to kind of learn and unlearn things, so to speak, as well. So I think that's another thing that I want to note is that not only at this full moon in Gemini, are we trying to, there's some kind of like communication. Maybe we're trying to finish up and ideas and thought processes about our life or finish up maybe some kind of thing we're learning that we're trying to finish up. But can also be as well, maybe some sort of like mindset. We're trying to become more open-minded, right? To step more into more open-minded where we see the world in different ways and don't get so attached to like the old ways of doing things. Not only that, but Gemini, I need to note, is a mutable sign. And because of that, it's very flexible. And willing to make adjustments and tweaks where need be. These are usually small ones because Gemini is ruled by Mercury, a very small planet, but is willing to make small tweaks and adjustments. So this another thing we could be trying to step into is a bunch of just small tweaks, small adjustments, that we might need to make within our situation to finish up so that eventually we can do some other things there. Not only that, but I also consider Gemini to be a more playful, lighthearted sign. One, because it's air. Air is very light, light as air. And also, two, because it's symbolized by two young twin boys, and which can be very kind of playful as well. So I think that's another thing that we're trying to step into or finish and step into kind of simultaneously is not only finish some kind of conversations, step into and finish some sort of conversations and step into kind of different mindset and release an old one and kind of step into some sort of learning situation, something new that we're learning to finish that. But maybe also trying to step into a different mindset, but also to a more playful experience of life where we feel like life is easier and lighter and simpler and maybe not as complicated in a lot of ways there too. I also want to note as well that Gemini, being an air sign, is not, sometimes it helps to know it's not like a water sign. So it tends to be more cerebral, more in the head, and not as bogged down in like deep and intense emotions or challenging emotions, which might be relevant, especially because the new moon we had 2 weeks ago was in Scorpio, and the full moon in Gemini doesn't always necessarily follow a Scorpio new moon. So I think we're also trying to, more fully release heavy, intense emotions so that we can feel lighter in our lives and in our experience as well, that may bring a lot of choices around that. Not only that, but maybe the last thing that I'll note as well is that Gemini does have to do with duality, which can mean a lot of different things. I think in this instance, especially with a lot of things going on in the astrology, it's duality between the old and the new, the old life and the new life we hope to create. So it can also be us maybe more fully stepping into that or getting better at handling that as well. That might be needed too. So I think that's what I'm going to say for now. When it comes to the main themes of this full moon in Gemini, what is going on is we're trying to more fully, I think, step into some conversations that need to be had so that we can finish those up and move on to other things. We're also trying to maybe step into certain ideas and thoughts and mindsets so that we can release ideas or other thoughts and mindsets that are no longer useful for us. We're trying to step into maybe something we've recently learned so that we can release learning that and use it or move on in different ways. We may also be trying to more fully step into maybe a more open mind where we become more open-minded to things and release things from the past or other attachments that we might have. We're trying to step into more of a playful experience in life that's not as heavy and bogged down with intense, uncomfortable, negative emotions as well. And we're trying to step into maybe more being okay with the duality in life instead of letting that frustrate us that might be happening. Okay. And I think that's it. I think those are the big themes I'm going to mention there because that's it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go backwards in time for a minute before I go forwards to give you more of the context of how we got here and of why these themes are now coming up to be felt, lived through, and experienced. Because there is a full moon in Gemini every single year. What makes it different is not that there is a full moon in Gemini, it's the alignments that happened before it and really around it. So I'm going to go back in time to give you the context. I like to start at an alignment in 2020. Okay. This section can get kind of long now because we're moving further on throughout time and throughout the year. So if you're not interested in hearing this section, totally fine. For whatever reason, doesn't matter. You can skip it. I've got the timestamps for you in the description to this video so that you can easily navigate to whatever you might like and get right into the interpretation if you want, which will be next. Okay, but now I'm going to go ahead and talk about the context. In order to get started with that, I'm going to go back to an alignment that occurred between January to April, somewhere right around there in 2020. Okay, what happened there? We had Jupiter, Pluto, the South Node, and Saturn all come conjunct towards the middle to late degrees of Capricorn. This is a very rare, difficult alignment. And this is very rare because Saturn and Pluto only come conjunct every 35 years and not always with Jupiter there, the South Node, which makes it even more rare than that. And difficult because Saturn and Pluto are considered malefic planets. The South Node can also be a bit hard, and Jupiter is in Capricorn, a sign it doesn't like to be in. Okay, what was the rare challenge that I think had gone on? Well, Saturn can indicate some sort of stuck energy that's happening, that Jupiter can expand, like a very big stuck energy, especially in Capricorn. Capricorn has to do with like the direction of our lives, the big public stuff. Feeling stuck and not liking the direction of our lives that had been going in for a while, maybe 35 years prior to that. I think the reason why we were feeling stuck and not liking really much about our lives is because of the Pluto. Pluto tends to bring too much of a thing that can be unbalanced and overwhelming. And Pluto is in Capricorn, and too much Capricorn can be too much structure, too much tradition, can indicate too many rules, can indicate being too practical or too responsible, because Capricorn also has a lot to do with those things. So I think that we were feeling stuck in our lives and not liking the direction it was going in because our lives felt too burdened by a heavy weight of responsibility and of trying to do what everyone else wanted us to do, what was socially acceptable or would get us status and success, or what we thought was the responsible thing to do, that it had just gotten overwhelming and made us feel alienated from what was truly important to us. Not only that, but Pluto can indicate big change, usually endings first before beginnings, and South Node too can indicate releasing things as well. And I think what happened in January to April of 2020 is that we realized, you know, I don't like the way that my life is going and has been going for a while because it's too heavy with responsibility and not a true representation of me and what I care about. And now I've got to make some big endings in order to get out of it so that I can eventually create something else, okay, which is hard. It's hard to end things that you've been a big part of your life. Okay, that then leads me now to the next alignment that I want to mention. And that next alignment, I'm going to fast forward many years to this year now because it's hard to fit everything into one video. And I'm going to fast forward to April of 2025, somewhere right around here in Aries. Okay, what happened in April of 2025? We had a new moon solar eclipse in the sign of Aries. Okay, this is important because it's an eclipse. Right? And because it's in Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, which tends to indicate new starts. Okay, what was this about? New moons are about new beginnings. Solar eclipses superpower that. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, about new beginnings and fresh starts. So this was us trying to create now a new experience of life after spending the past 5 years in various capacities trying to end old things that we did not like. Not only that, but other things I need to note about Aries is that Aries is a Mars ruled sign, which means it's also about action as well. So not only were we trying to move into a new experience of life, but we were also trying to take the actions to do it. Okay. And because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, it doesn't mean act in the same ways you've been acting. It means acting in new ways. We also realized we needed to get into a new experience. In order to get into a new experience of life, we needed to act in very different ways than we were before in order to make that happen, right? Because if you want something different, you got to act in a different way or else you're going to get the same result. Not only that, but Aries is a fire sign. Fire signs are not Capricorn, right? It's not about responsibility and seriousness and structure and success and status. No, Aries is about passion. It's about impulse and just doing kind of whatever comes out that way and following more of your impulses, your instinct. And I might even say your emotion. To me, that is somewhat of an emotion. So not only in April of this year did we realize, okay, we've ended enough stuff that now we're ready to do more new things, like we're ready to bring more of the new and better experience in our life, but that in order to bring a new and better experience into our life, we needed to behave in drastically different ways than we did before so we don't recreate the same issues. And that the different way we need to behave is not one based on responsibility, practicality, serious status and success, but instead is one based on emotion and passion and heart and our interests and instinct and impulse and all of that in order to correct the problem from the past while. Okay, that then leads me now to the next alignment I want to mention. And now I'm going to go through all the new moons and some of the full moons too. And that's going to be that next new moon that happened after that in Taurus, somewhere around May of this year, 2025. New moons are about new beginnings. Taurus, being the second sign of the zodiac and fixed earth, is a lot about sustaining something that we've been working, that we've already started, especially in the previous sign in Aries. And what we were sustaining were these new behaviors that are based more on our passions and our impulses and our emotions and our instincts. Okay. Now I need to note as well with Taurus being fixed earth, it does tend to be a little bit of a slower sign that could have made us feel like, we were going slow or needed to slow down to make sure we really got these new behaviors right, or felt like we were going slow because when we start to follow our passions and our impulses, we feel like we're doing less, right? Because it's easier and because we're not weighed down by the heavy responsibility. And sometimes when we're doing less, it feels slower. So there was a little bit of like a connection to that of like doing more of what we wanted to do and it feeling a little bit slow as we figured it out and sustained it. Okay, that then leads me now to the next alignment I want to mention. Another month later, somewhere around June of this year, 2025, we had a new moon in the sign of Gemini, which this one's connected to because this is the full moon in the same sign. New moons are about new beginnings, new energy, fresh starts. Gemini is a lot about adapting to something, getting more familiar with it, maybe even adjusting our mindset, communicating about it, learning about it, all of that. And again, it's all going to come back to Aries season, which starts the zodiac. We were trying to really adapt and adjust to what? These new behaviors where we follow more of our passions and our impulses and to communicate about that and get used to that and learn more about that, which I think that we did. Okay, that then leads me now to the next new moon, which was a month after that, somewhere around July of 2025 in the sign of Cancer. New moons are about new beginnings, new energy, and fresh starts. Cancer is a lot about grounding something, becoming more firm in it so that it can really start to grow and take hold and flourish. And what, again, we were trying to ground was what happened in Aries season. It all comes back to that, these new behaviors, passionate, instinctual, impulsive. So we were really trying to ground that, which I do think started to happen in a significant way because that new moon was conjunct Jupiter in its sign of exaltation. That then leads me now to the next lunation I want to mention, but now I'm going to skip to the full moons. We had a full moon about 2 weeks after that in the opposite sign of Capricorn, somewhere around here, I think also in July of this year. Full moons are about stepping into something we've been working towards for a while. Capricorn is more public facing, being the top of the chart. It's also about our life direction and really turning a corner with that as well. And it's an earth sign, which tends to manifest in more practical ways. So I think what happened in July is that after getting this new approach to life, these new actions and sustaining them and adapting them and getting more grounded in them, that they finally started to be seen more publicly and that we finally started to act in these different ways. In more parts of our life, in more areas to really see it kind of take hold and start to change our life direction a little bit to be based on our emotions and our passions and our instincts and all of that. Okay, that then leads me to the next alignment that I want to mention, which was a month after that, or 2 weeks after that, excuse me. That following month, around August of 2025, we had a new moon in the next sign over of Leo. New moons are about new beginnings, new energy, and fresh starts. Leo is a lot about courage and bravery. It's also too about kind of risk taking or taking things to the next level. And with it being a fixed sign, staying fixed in something. which again comes back to these new behaviors. But even though that's the case, I do need to note that that new moon in Leo was happening at the same time Mercury was also retrograde in Leo, which can create a little bit of a challenge there, especially around the Leo themes, and cause us to not have the courage or the strength that we needed in order to follow through. So what to me happened around August of this year is that, yeah, we had gotten new behaviors that are more passionate based on our emotions and sustained them, adapted them, grounded them, and started to actually see them manifest and use them in our real world. But then we got scared. Then we got scared of these things and of going all the way in, and began to lose our courage and back off these new behaviors, which were going so well, which are the things that we really needed to accomplish, which was hard. That then leads me now. The next thing I want to mention, 2 weeks after that, the connecting full moon in the sign of Aquarius, also somewhere around August of this year. Full moons are about stepping into things you've been working towards for quite some time. Aquarius is a lot about freedom, liberation. It's also an air sign, letting go of heavy emotional baggage as well. So I think what happened in August of this year is that we began to let go of the lack of courage and liberate ourselves from our fear and insecurity and lack of courage, so that we could be more comfortable with this new approach to life and these new actions that we're getting. That then leads me now to the next alignment that I want to mention. 2 weeks after that, in September of this year, the new moon in Virgo. New moons are about new beginnings, new energy, and fresh starts. Virgo is about our habits and our daily routines, doing something day in and day out. And I think in September, what we were trying to do more habitually were those new behaviors. To do these new behaviors where we follow our passions, our emotions, and our instincts day in and day out. Not only when it's easy, not only on the days we have courage, not only on occasion, not only when it feels comfortable, all the time. Day in, day out is what we tried to do there. Okay, that then leads me now to the next alignment I want to mention, which happened about 2 weeks after that. Also, somewhere around September of this year, we had a full moon lunar eclipse in the sign of Pisces. Full moons are about stepping into things we've been working towards for a while. Eclipses superpower that. Pisces is a lot about having faith and letting go, and can be passive, but I think can also be active, taking a leap of faith. Again, especially with these new behaviors, to kind of trust that they'll work if we do them more. So in September of this year, I believe that we kind of overcame our lack of courage from a month or so ago, and began to have more faith that these new behaviors would work, and embrace these new behaviors more that are based more on our passions, and more fully go all in on them. That then leads me now to the next alignment that I want to mention, which is going to be 2 weeks after that, somewhere around October-ish of this year. We had another new moon in Virgo, except it was a solar eclipse near the south node. Oops. I'm in Libra in the chart. We're still back here in Virgo in October as well. Okay. What is that about? New moons, sure, are about new beginnings, but this was on the south node, which is about endings and kind of letting things go. And it's in Virgo. Virgo, when negative, can indicate overthinking, being too critical or too perfectionistic, or working too hard, especially for things that kind of don't matter as much as we think they do, as well, that we were trying to let go of, and our mindset as well. So after taking the leap of faith to trust more of these new behaviors, acting more on our passions, emotions, instincts, and intuition, we then tried to release this critical part of our mind that told us we shouldn't do that, and to release this tendency to want to overwork or overperform instead of just let these behaviors work their magic. That was happening. Okay, then that leads me to the next alignment I want to mention. November. Well, do I want to go? Sure. You know what? Maybe I'll go still to October. 2 weeks after that, we had another full moon in Aries in October. Full moons are all about stepping into things we've been working towards for a while. Aries is these new behaviors and these new actions that we were trying to cultivate. So it was us going even more all in on those. And Aries too can be very warrior-like, fighting anything in the way that told us we couldn't, even if it was in ourselves, which I thought was good. Okay, that then leads me now to the next alignment, November. We had a new moon in the next sign over now of Libra right here. New moons are about new beginnings, new energy, and fresh starts. Libra is a lot about kind of balance, finding our balance in this different space, our calm and our peace and our ease, and also too about relationships as well. And I think what happened at that new moon in Libra is that we began to realize, right, that we were doing these new behaviors, but we were feeling a little overwhelmed by them. We needed to find our balance, and that we also needed to figure out how to integrate relationships into the equation, since we hadn't really been focusing on them for most of this year, because this year has been about us, our passions, and not about other people. So we started to realize there maybe was something there that might eventually need to be resolved. That then leads me now to the next alignment, which was a full moon 2 weeks later in the opposite, around the opposite sign here in Taurus, November of this year. Full moons are about stepping into things we've been working towards for a while. Taurus is also Venus ruled like Libra, where that new moon is more about ease and calm and peace and confidence as well. So I think that was us continuing to find our balance and feel much more at peace around these new behaviors, and to spend a little more time figuring out how we can work some things out. Maybe I'll say that, since these are slower signs, how we can work things out with relationships. Okay, that then leads me now to the next alignment, which was shortly after that. Also around, right, November, it was 2 weeks ago, we had a new moon in the sign of Scorpio here. New moons are about new beginnings, new energy, and fresh start. Scorpio is a lot about change. This can be change within ourselves, permanent change. It also, too, is a sign that has to do with relationships and with money, which all comes back to these new behaviors. So I think, and I need to note that was conjunct Mercury, which was retrograde halfway during its retrograde period near the sun, which is more of a positive thing, which can give us good insights and clarity. So that new moon in Scorpio in November 2 weeks ago was about us more permanently changing our own selves to embody these new behaviors more permanently, and embrace them emotionally and to understand them, and was about us also getting some good clarity and insights about how to fix things with relationships and money that didn't align with this new approach, or how to better integrate relationships and money into this new approach to life that's based more on our emotions, our passions, and our instincts, and to really get that together. Okay, that then leads me now to this full moon in Gemini, of which this video is for, in December, right about here. Okay, full moons are about stepping into things we've been working towards for a while. Gemini is about communication. It's about our thoughts. It's about adapting to something, feeling more ease, lighter, playful, all of that. And I think that's what we're trying to do. I think we're trying to step into and finish up, right? Full moons are also about finishing any conversations that might still be lingering as it pertains to that last new moon in Scorpio, to the relationships and money, and how the relationships and money can fit in with our new way of acting in life that's based more on our passions. Not only that, I think it's also about us trying to step into a different mindset, a different way of thinking about our lives, and to finish up making any more adjustments that it is that we might need, or learning things there, and to feel lighter now that we're fixing these things from the past that's been going on. So I think that's where we are there. Now, that was a lot, so it's getting to be a doozy to repeat, and I do like to repeat things, so maybe just going to try to say it very simple. It's been a long journey for many years to try to end things in our life that we did not like, and because they were too responsible and ignored our true passions, and to create a different experience of life that's based more on our true heart and passions. It's been a long journey, but we're finally figuring it out, especially this year, and getting the right behaviors and the right perspective that will make a new experience a reality. And we're getting really close. We're getting really close, finally fixing, finally not only getting these new behaviors, but figuring out how to integrate relationships and money into it so that we can kind of move forward in this different way more easily after this point. So there's something, so maybe that's what I'll say there. Yeah. It's like, it's been a long journey, and we're getting very close to finishing up, resolving anything in the way of a new experience of life that we need. Okay, because that's it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase the chart, and now I'm going to go back to the full moon in Gemini and talk about it more specifically of what is going on at this full moon in Gemini and what it means. And to do that, I'm going to place on the chart what it is that I'm referring to so that you can see it and follow along. So let's do that. Again, here's the moon in Gemini making an opposition over to the sun in Sagittarius, which is the full moon. Okay, again, what is this about? Well, this is about us trying to finish up. Full moon's about that. Any conversations that might need to be had, any old mindsets that's going on, anything that we might need to learn, any adjustments in our life that might need to be made so that we can step into what? A different way of thinking, different experiences in our life, more ease, more playfulness, and more lightheartedness and more open-mindedness. That's going on. Okay. And again, if you listen to that context, just to bring it forward, for those who didn't, this to me pertains to that last new moon in Scorpio, which was a lot about relationships and money. Okay. That last new moon in Scorpio was about us finally getting clarity and insights about how to fix things with relationships and money. Okay. If you watch that video, which means that this full moon in Gemini, which is a part of that same lunar month, same lunar cycle that started at that new moon, is about us finishing up the conversations about relationships and money, or with relationships and money, about how to fix them. Is us finishing making the last few tweaks with relationships and money, right? In order to get those in a better place, is about us finishing up the old way of thinking about relationships, the old way of thinking about money, so that we can do it in a different way. So that we can step into more ease, more playfulness, more lightheartedness, and totally different ways of thinking and seeing our lives. It's us finishing that up. Okay. Why? Maybe to connect it again to that last new moon in Scorpio. Why does that need to happen? Well, because a lot of this year has been self-focused. A lot of this year has been mostly focused on us as individuals and how we can behave differently in life in a way that fulfills us as individuals and listens to our emotions as individuals. Okay. It was not about relationships, because sometimes relationships confuse that. So it was not about that. It was about us figuring that out for ourselves, and us figuring out our own selves and how we can act differently in a way that honors our emotions, because it's these different behaviors that are based more on our emotions that are going to change our life. Because that's been missing, because we've been ignoring our emotions and our passions for so long. And because a lot of this year was about us focusing on ourselves and what we're passionate about, which is ultimately going to fix our lives, and not relationships, especially, and not some things with money. Now, in the past week or two at that new moon in Scorpio, we needed to figure that out. So I hope that that's becoming clear here around this full moon in Gemini. Okay. We're figuring out how to integrate relationships and money into a totally new way of acting in our lives that's based more on our true heart, our passions, and our emotions, instead of logic, tradition, etc. Okay, because that's going to help us get into a new, different, and better experience of life that we've been trying to get to for quite some time. And now we're trying to finish it up. Finish up these conversations, finish up these adjustments, finish up these old ways of thinking that was going on with relationships and money, and finish up learning what we need to do about relationships and money so that we can move on better, easier. Okay. Is this making sense? Okay. Okay, now that leads me to the next alignment that I want to mention, which is really the main one. And it's that this full moon in Gemini is making a square to the nodal axis, which includes the north node here in Pisces and the south node here in Virgo. Okay, and because the moon is squaring it, and the moon is exactly opposite the sun, it means the sun's squaring it too. The sun's squaring the nodal axis, making this little like grand cross square configuration here in the chart. Okay. This should not be a surprise when I say is a bit of a challenging alignment. It's a bit of a challenging alignment because it's a function of four squares. Squares are typically considered hard aspects that can make it difficult, especially with it being a square to the nodal axis, which is also a bit of a unique thing. So this is some sort of challenge. Challenge with what? Challenge with the full moon in Gemini, especially, right? Because that's where it is. And that full moon in Gemini is about finishing it up. Finishing up conversations with relationships and money about how they fit into a new experience of life. Finishing up thoughts about relationships and money and old thoughts, right? Finishing up adjustments, tweaks that need to be made. Okay, there's some challenge around that that's going on, and adopting new mindsets, new ways of thinking, more ease in our life, more playfulness, challenges with that. Okay, what exactly is the challenge? Well, squares to the nodal axis can sometimes work a little bit differently than normal squares. Um, and the way that squares to the nodal axis work, especially in evolutionary astrology, which is the type of astrology that I do, tend to bring a stuck energy, feeling stuck, and tend to bring indecision, hesitation, and confusion. Okay? And the reason for that is because you get planets, in these cases are both luminaries, the sun and the moon. Technically aren't planets, they're luminaries, halfway in between the north node and the south node. And when that happens, the planets, in this case, are luminaries that are squaring, those get confused. I'm halfway in between the south node and the north node. Which one do I do? I'm 50-50. I could go either way. They get confused. They get indecisive. They hesitate. They don't know. And therefore, when we're confused and hesitating and not making decisions, we get stuck. Okay, that can create a challenge. And again, that is going to be related to the Gemini energy, which is around the conversations that need to be had, the things that need to be fixed and finished up, the tweaks that needed to be made, maybe the learning that's going on. It's that where to maybe get it more exact, more detailed, where we're not fully doing that, right? Because we're hesitating. We're not fully finishing up the conversations with relationships and money that need to be had, okay, to resolve those, to integrate them into a new experience. We're not fully finishing the little tweaks and adjustments that we need to make with that in order to get to where we need to be. We're not fully, adjusting our mindset and our thought processes and these thoughts about all these things. We're not fully finishing the learning or the course or whatever it is that's needed here. We're not fully finishing that, and we're not fully stepping into more playfulness, more ease, new thoughts, new mindsets. We're not fully doing that either. Okay, now, we're doing it a little bit. Maybe I should make that clear. Skip steps. Do know we're doing it a little bit. We're doing it a little bit. We are, especially after that new moon in Scorpio, which I tended to like. But we're not doing it a lot. We're not doing it a lot. We're not doing it all the way. And we're hesitating and we're holding back and we're getting confused. We're confusing ourselves, or we're all of a sudden becoming indecisive, right? About that, which also sometimes Gemini can do, being like the twins. We're getting a little indecisive about the whole thing. That can be a little bit hard. Okay. Not only that, I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to give you some advice because there's some advice about how to handle this according to evolutionary astrology. But before I come back to this, I'm going to move on to another alignment that's also a challenge. Mars here in Sagittarius squaring Saturn over in Pisces. Okay, now this is also a difficult alignment because it's a square, which is a hard aspect. We got all these squares going on. Okay, and Mars is technically considered a malefic planet that can manifest in a more challenging way, and Saturn too can be difficult as well. So this can be a bit hard. What is that? Well, we've got Mars in Sag. Mars is about action, and Sagittarius, it wants to do new things that are different. I also consider Sag a bit playful, like Gemini, fun-loving, adventurous, likes to be excited. Maybe it's also a sign too that's more hopeful and optimistic. So we want to be doing new things and moving on, right? And to put that in the context of this other stuff, we want to be doing new things. We don't want to be dealing with the relationships and money and with fixing that and with having these thoughts and having these conversations and tweaking all of these things. No. We definitely do not want that. At this full moon in Gemini, we want to be having fun. We want to be pursuing new stuff. We want to be all this exciting new things. We want to just not have a care in the world, and just feel happy, go lucky, and just hope everything's going to work out magically on its own. That's happening, and with Saturn there squaring Mars, that's creating a difficulty that's not working. That's not working because the Saturn's creating some stuckness. It's not working. We're also not able to do that because, again, Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, which is about the past, because there's still some things from the past that have not fully been resolved, that have not fully been worked through and committed. Saturn's a lot about commitment and perseverance, to the full extent that it really needs, really making it hard for us to tap into that expansive energy. Because not only is Saturn, Sagittarius is very expansive because it's ruled by Jupiter, a very big planet, but Jupiter also used to be the ancient ruler of Pisces before Neptune was discovered. So both Pisces and Neptune want to expand and more and different and hope and faith and all this stuff, but it's just like we're not able to do that. Which to me is very similar to the fact that the full moon in Gemini squared the nodal axis, but does add a little bit more nuance. So what that means to me to kind of bring that together so far is that, yeah, we're trying to finish up. Maybe a part of us is somewhere is trying to finish up some conversations with relationships and with money, to figure out how they integrate into a new experience of life that we're creating and new behaviors that are based more on our passions and our emotions instead of logic and responsibility. Not only that, but there's a part of us that also wants to finish up making those adjustments and tweaks in order to do that. But even though there is a part of us that wants to finish up kind of fixing these things with relationships and money and making these adjustments, there's another part of us, the duality, Gemini, that doesn't want to do it, that would rather be playing and having fun and doing other stuff and just wishing it all away and hoping it'll all work out and it's out and just moving on from this and doing something new that is really making us feel, stuck and confused and indecisive and not really able to tap into that new, exciting, joyful energy as much as we might like. That's hard because we still haven't fixed the past. We still haven't fixed these things with relationships and money, and they're still hanging around. Okay. Not only that, but we've also got Mars. We're going to go back to that in Sagittarius, making that square to Saturn. It's also making a trine to Chiron in Aries as well, which is also uncomfortable because it's Chiron, which can indicate triggers and insecurities and fears. And Mars, again, being technically can be a malefic planet as well. So this can also create some difficulty. Again, it's the difficulty acting, because Mars is about action, and Chiron can indicate, insecurities around action, where we don't know what to do, or maybe where we want to do the thing that's not helpful for us. Maybe there's a thought of that I don't know what to do, or the thing that I want to do is not the thing that I actually need to be doing for the situation. That can create a lot of inner conflict, and this can create frustration, Chiron, anger, especially with Aries and Mars there, that we're feeling stuck, that something's not resolving, that the thing we want to do is not the thing we need to do, can create a lot of that. And Chiron too could bring a lot of triggers as well, a lot of like internal just triggers and add insult to injury and make us feel just more like kind of raw and wounded. So that can be very difficult too. So I hope you're seeing how this is playing out here, of like, we're fixing things with relationships and money to integrate them into a new experience of life and new behaviors that are based more on our passions, because we haven't been doing that and because that's the final thing we need to do in order to move into a better experience of life. But we're not finishing those conversations, and we're not finishing resolving those things to the full extent that it is that they really need to, so that we can feel at ease. We're not finishing them. And instead, we'd rather zone out. We'd rather party. We'd rather play. We'd rather wish it all away and pretend it's going to work itself out and do something else, And that's not working, because we are not finishing resolving the thing. And what we want to do is not what we need to do. And that's making us feel really stuck and agitated and upset and angry and maybe even confused about why we're stuck, even though the answer to me is clear. We're stuck because we just don't want to finish doing what needs to be done. Okay. That's happening there. Okay. So what now is the advice? Now I'll go to some advice before I talk about a few other things after this. Well, a skip step, which is what squares the nodes are, which is what this full moon in Gemini is doing, has some advice on how to resolve it. In order to overcome it and in order to move forward and get unstuck. And the advice on how to resolve the skip step is for is to do the node, the node that the planet, in this case, the luminary being squared, last touched, because that node, the luminary is more familiar with, and therefore has an easier time accessing. So it's to do that. And what's interesting about this configuration is that we've got both the sun and the moon involved in this square of the nodes, and that they each have a different resolution node, right? The sun last touched the south node a few weeks or months ago during Virgo season, and the moon last touched the north node in Pisces like a week ago before this. So they have different resolution nodes that they need to work through. Okay, how does that work? Well, let's start with the south node in Virgo, okay, because that's one of the things we need to do, and we need to consciously choose to do it. Because I don't think I don't necessarily think this is going to happen naturally. And if it does happen naturally, there's a struggle before it happens. Okay. So this is something you might have to consciously choose to do. What is the South Node in Virgo? Well, Virgo is a lot about fixing things, correlating to, to Mercury, which was conjunct that last new moon in Scorpio. It's a lot about fixing things, which I think pertains to the relationships and money and following through on that. Virgo is also about putting in some work and effort. Sometimes Virgo's about like doing the dirty work that you don't want to do. It's about putting in the work and the effort towards that. Virgo is also a Mercury ruled sign about communication, having the conversations, especially the detailed ones where you go through step by step and lay out all the facts and details, exactly what needs to happen, and come up with a plan. Okay, there's a little more planning that might need to happen and to be involved as well, because that's going to help us feel the Sagittarius energy. Like we can be more hopeful, like we're moving into new experiences, like we can be more excited and all of that. So we need to finish doing the work, taking care of the business, having the hard conversations that need to be in really practical, strategic ways, okay, detailed ways. There. Not only that, but the way to resolve the other skip step, the moon in Gemini, is to go this way towards this node, the north node in Pisces. Hey, what is Pisces about? We have to choose to do this. Pisces is about letting the past go. It's about leaving the past behind, which for some of you may mean leaving a relationship or leaving a job that includes money, leaving an old money situation behind as well. Some of the reason why we're stuck is because we'd rather be doing something else, right? And we don't want to have the conversations, and we don't want to, have to deal with all of this stuff. But maybe because some of you are like afraid of leaving things behind, are afraid of making a permanent ending of something, because that's what Pisces is a lot about. It's the last sign of the zodiac. It's the final ending, the final goodbye. Maybe a lot of you are afraid of making that final break with the past. That's going on. So there could be something there. You need to let something go. Not only that, but Pisces too is a lot about like trust and faith that, fixing these old things, even if it isn't what you want to do, or even if you're not quite sure how exactly to do it, is going to work. It's going to work. I think as well, Pisces is a lot about compassion to yourself throughout the process. Because it's not always easy to fix things and have conversations, maybe even grace and compassion towards other people. Doesn't mean we have to stay with other people that are no longer meant for us, but we can extend grace and compassion throughout the process, regardless. So it can indicate that, right, trusting our intuition can also indicate as well, just like releasing our emotions, healing our emotions. Pisces is a water sign, can be about that, kind of releasing and letting go of old emotional states as well, or working through some of our emotions as well around the past that might be needed there. Okay. So I think that that's what's happening. And I'm thinking like all of these things are, I of course see everything in the astrological chart is connected, even though they're different aspects in different places. But I hope it's all becoming clear. We need to finish fixing things with relationships and with money, or if not fixing, integrating them into a new experience of life and these new behaviors, because that's the thing that's going to finally get us into a different and better experience of life. But we're not fully following through on that. Okay. And we're not fully finishing these things with relationships and money and having the conversations that we need and making the adjustments that we need. And that's making us feel stuck. Okay. And confused and indecisive. And the reason why we're not finishing these things with relationships and to money, I think, is for a few reasons, is because we don't want to put in the work. We don't want to put in the effort, because it feels not fun to have to finish these things. And because we don't want to have the hard conversations, maybe there's a hard conversation that's involved, that we don't want to deal with. And because maybe we're afraid of fully saying goodbye to things and ending things and drawing a line in the sand and releasing the past, because maybe we're being too hard on ourselves and aren't trusting our intuition and aren't opening up enough, which is making us want to zone out and ignore our problems, ignore them instead of fix them, and just wish them all away and hope they'll go away on their own, which is not working, which is triggering us and making us upset and angry and hurt. Okay. Because of all of that. Okay. And the way to resolve this challenge is to consciously choose to finish fixing these things, even if you don't want to do it, to have the hard conversations, even if you don't want to do it, to work these things out more with relationships and money, even if you don't want to do it, and think more things through on it, and to release these things from the past and trust your intuition and be kind to yourself and others throughout the process, and to heal and work through some of your emotions and your fears surrounding it so that you can do it. Okay. Because, and that's going to lead me now to the next series of alignments, because if you can make those choices, there's a lot of good energy around. Okay. Because there's also, at the time of this full moon in Gemini, Mercury in Scorpio, now direct, after being retrograde for a few weeks, making a trine to Jupiter in Cancer and to Saturn in Pisces right here, which are making a trine to each other, both Saturn and Jupiter as well. Okay. And this is actually a very, very good alignment. Okay. This triangle here. Now, is it the one I think we're going to feel the most? No. Okay. To me, when it comes to like the hierarchy of aspects, it's like squares are felt like in oppositions the most. And then maybe conjunctions, and then maybe I'll get down to like trines and sextiles. So in the hierarchy of aspects, trines are not felt first and foremost. We're going to feel those squares to the node and the square to Mars. Okay. So is this the first thing? No. What to me is going to dominate at this full moon in Gemini is this stuck feeling of like, I don't want to deal with my problems. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it because it's too much work. It's too much effort. I'd rather be doing something else. I've been doing this forever. I'm scared of releasing the past, right? It's like, that's going to dominate. But if you work with that, and if you resolve that issue, right, by making conscious choice to do the things maybe you don't want to do, then something very good after that can start to open up. Okay. With this trine, this grand water trine. Okay. And I like this because I tend to interpret trines more positively on the whole. And also too, because this is a grand water trine, which is all the water signs connecting. And all the water signs have something in common, which to me means they can work easier with each other. We've also got Jupiter involved in Cancer at sign of exaltation, where it really loves to be as well, helping this alignment out. So this to me can be a good thing. What is the good thing going on? Well, Mercury in Scorpio is about relationships and money. It's also about change. Mercury can bring more of our mind there. And it's the ruler of the South Node in Virgo, right? That we're avoiding, really, and of the full moon in Gemini that we're avoiding too. But it's going to bring us there. And Mercury in Scorpio can bring a laser focus. The Scorpio can bring a focus in our mind. Mercury, especially now that it's direct, with more clarity about how to change Scorpio relationships and money for the better. It's connecting to Saturn. Saturn can bring a commitment, us committing to working those things out, especially with Saturn recently direct as well, a decision, firm decisions. I think there needs to be a firm decision that needs to be made. Okay, firm decisions to Pisces, release the past, let something go. Okay, a relationship, a money source, or a way of doing relationships, a way of doing money, here, or if not that, to solidify an ending. Maybe something ended before, but to solidify an ending to some things and to make a permanent, Pisces, the last sign of the zodiac, line in the sand. When it comes to that, that then with the connecting Jupiter and Cancer can bring better emotions. Cancer emotions, Jupiter expansive, more optimistic emotions, make you feel more hopeful, more at ease. Also too, can make you feel more grounded, because Cancer is the lowest part of the chart, around where we feel most safe and grounded, can make us feel like we're finally in a better place, like we're landing in a much better place, and like a new experience of life is starting to become more real and more grounded and more firm. Right? It's going to help us with that as well. Not only should I note, is it going to help us with that, but two, we're also going to be able to feel the Sag and the Gemini more, because we're going to have resolved the skip step. So we're also going to feel too like we're able to have more fun, right? To me, the Sag and the Gemini are both very fun loving, to like have more fun, be more playful. We're going to feel more able to, with the Sagittarius, do new things, embark on new things that we're more excited about. We're going to feel more lighthearted with the Gemini. We're going to feel, more able to kind of be at ease and let go, again, let go of old thoughts, let go of old ideas, let go of old burdens, and feel like a child again. Maybe I'll say that with Gemini being ruled by two twin boys, we're going to feel childlike again after that, because we're resolving this thing with relationships and money, which is what's needed. And it's finally putting us in a better place that feels more secure, with more of a foundation to stand on there as well, with a whole bunch of new thoughts and ideas about how life works. Okay, so I think that's what I'm going to say there. And that's really the last aspect I'm going to mention in this interpretation. Because that's it, I'm just going to repeat all of that one last time without the jargon, so that you can get a little bit of a different and better idea of what I think is going on here. So let me do that now. What I think is going on at this full moon in Gemini is that we're trying to, or we need to, finish up some conversations with relationships and money, about relationships and money, and about how they factor in to a new and different way, experience of life and way of behaving in life that's based more on our passions instead of logic and responsibility, so that we can fix any issues with those and bring them more together. So that we can move more fully, right, into a new experience more completely. We're also trying to finish up making any adjustments that we need, and any thoughts that might need to happen surrounding that, so that we can feel a lot easier and lighthearted in our lives. But even though we're trying to do that, or know deep down that we need to do that, there's a part of us that's avoiding that. That's avoiding finishing the things with relationships and money, and avoiding making the last few tweaks we need with relationships and money to fully fix that. And instead is trying to ignore it, or zone out from it, or forget about it, or hope it'll resolve itself, and just focus on other things, which isn't obviously working, because we're not actually fixing the issue there, and is making us feel confused and stuck and indecisive about where we're going. And the main reason why we're confused and stuck and zoning out and not actually finishing these things that need to be finished with relationships and money is because we just don't want to put in the work, because we're tired of it, and it's been a lot, and it doesn't seem fun, and doesn't want to have the hard conversations because maybe these seem difficult. We don't want to upset someone, and because we're afraid of drawing a permanent line in the sand to make a permanent ending with something, or release something, and aren't trusting our intuition that's going on, that is just making us, again, feel confused and stagnate and all of that. That can be hard and make us feel very triggered and frustrated and upset and angry that like nothing's working for us to adjust our lives, and that the things that we want to do aren't necessarily the things that we need to be doing, which can be a challenge. And because it's going on, I'm going to give you some advice about how to resolve it. And the advice about how to resolve it is to consciously choose to finish fixing these things with relationships and money, even if you don't want to, by doing the hard work, the hard thing, or having the hard conversations that might be needed, and fully thinking things through and planning things through about all of that. And to choose to fix this by releasing things from the past once and for all that you need, drawing a more firm line in the sand, making a more firm decision, and having compassion towards yourselves and others as you do it, and listening to your intuition. Because if you can make that choice, and to fix these things and to make a firm decision, then I think it's going to work. It's going to work to help you release these things from the past and make these changes with relationships and money and feel much better and more hopeful and more optimistic. And like you really are moving into a different and better experience of life in the way that you need. And it's also going to help you to feel more hopeful and have more fun and feel more at ease again and looser and lighter and like a child again, and bring more of that childlike energy back into your life where you're not so burdened by these old things in the past like you once were, which I think is ultimately meant to be a good thing. Okay, and that's it. Because that's it, what I like to do next in the video is to say a few more things about this energy, but in a more conversational way without being as beholden to the aspects, because sometimes I feel like it helps to kind of say the same thing in different ways, depending on how you like to learn. So I'm going to do that. What do I want to say? Start with. Okay, we need to finish, right? That's the whole point. We need to finish having some hard conversations, right, with relationships and money, and finish tying up some things with relationships and money that aren't right. Okay, that's really what needs to happen. Okay, and maybe let me go back because I want to make sure we're clear on that. Why do we need to finish doing this? Well, because this whole year has been about us learning how to behave in a different way, okay? Different actions, different behaviors. What are those different actions and those different behaviors that this whole year has been about? It's been about us learning to act in a way that's based more on passion, emotion, instinct, and impulse, because these are all Aries things where we had a solar eclipse earlier this year and Saturn's been. Okay, learning to act that way and to not act, right? Because it helps to compare and contrast, and to not act in a Capricorn way, because that's where Pluto was for quite some time over the course of the past few years. Okay. And Capricorn is a lot about seriousness, tradition, practicality, respect, all of that, right? So that's been a big thing. Yeah, I think that's what I need to do. I'm going to back up. Big picture. That's been a big thing of this whole year. A big thing of this whole year is that we're learning to act in a different way, based more on our instincts, our impulses, our passions, and our emotions, and not on logic, responsibility, seriousness, status, tradition, all of that. Okay, that's what we've been doing. Another thing that I want to note is that the reason why we've been doing that is because these behaviors are what's going to get us into a different and better experience of life that we've been trying to get to for quite some time. Why is that? Well, the old behaviors that we had, which were the serious, the tradition, the responsibility, all of that, okay, that we had for many years prior to this, created a life we did not like. Why is that? Well, when you're living a life based on actions of like, I'm going to do whatever is traditional, whatever everyone else wants me to do, whatever socially respectable, whatever's going to get me status, what you're doing is you're not listening to yourself. You're not listening to your heart. You're not listening to your emotions. You're not listening to your intuition. You're not listening to you and what you want and what spirit wants for you. You're listening to the outside world and what everyone else wants. Okay. And when you're listening to what other people want instead of what you want, you tend to create things in your life that you don't actually want, right? Like that you're not happy with. Okay. But when you start to do what you want to do, that's good for you, that you're passionate about and excited about, then that changes. Then you start to create a life that's better for you because you're more fulfilled. You're more in it. You feel more connected emotionally as a person with it. Okay. Which is going to create a better experience. So that's the first thing that we need to understand. If you haven't understood it already from the months or so watching my videos, is that since the beginning of this year, we've been trying to adopt different behaviors that are based more on our passions and our impulses and our instinct and our excitement instead of logic, practicality, serious responsibility, tradition, and hard work. And the reason we've been doing that is because the hard behaviors, hard work, practice, serious, created a life we did not like that we wanted to escape. And in order to correct that problem, to create a life we no longer want to escape, we need to start listening to ourselves and our emotions and our intuition so that we're not doing things just because everyone else wants to do them, but so that we're doing things that we want to do because we're fulfilled by. Okay. Another thing that I want to note about these new behaviors that we started to adopt the beginning of this year is that in many senses, I didn't say this as much in each of my horoscopes for the past few months, but these new behaviors required us to be more solitary, more alone, more independent, or to remove ourselves a little bit from relationships to focus on ourselves. Why? Well, in terms of the astrology, because Aries indicates these new behaviors, right? That are more passionate, that are more instinctual and more impulsive with the solar eclipse there earlier this year, Saturn there. Okay. And Aries is a solitary sign. Aries is not a relationship sign. It's about ourselves. Okay. It's about ourselves. And because when we're trying to figure out new behaviors, when we're doing something perhaps new for the first time, it's hard to do it with relationships because we don't know what we're doing. We have to do it more alone, more solitary, which is why Aries is also the first sign of the zodiac. So that's another thing to note about it is that, yeah, we've been trying to get new behaviors since the beginning of this year, more passionate, more excitable, more based on our emotions, because that's going to help us create a better life for ourselves away from the old life, which we didn't like, which was created because we weren't listening to our true heart and we're listening to what we thought we should do. And us adopting these new behaviors for this year has required us to spend more time alone or to not focus as much on relationships so that we can figure it out and so that we can get ourselves in order, right? And we've done well with that, I think. If you've been watching my videos, I think we've done well with finally getting these new behaviors and integrating them into our being and focusing on them more. But even though we've been great with these new behaviors, what we still have not done fully this year, we've done it a little bit, but not fully this year, is integrated relationships and money into them in the way that we need. What does that mean? What might that look like? Well, what that means is that when it comes to these new behaviors where we're following more of our passion and our intuition and our emotions and whatever, we're good at doing it alone when other people and money aren't involved. We're good at following our passions when it's just us. I woke up this morning and I wanted to go for a walk in the park and I wanted to, eat this instead of that. Like, we're good at that. But the minute there's another person involved, oh, wait, I was going to go to the park this morning because that's what my emotions are telling me to do, but I don't know, there's another person in my life and they don't want to go to the park. They want to go here instead. It's like that's what we haven't figured out yet, or we want to eat this for breakfast, but the person that we want to eat breakfast doesn't want to eat breakfast the same thing we want to eat. It's things like that. Or say there's money involved. We want to. This whole year, I think we've been good at figuring out how we can follow our emotions and our intuition when money's not involved, when we can do things that are free, Oh, I can go to the park, it's free. But the minute that it's like, okay, well, what if I don't want to go to the park? What if I want to go somewhere that I have to pay to get into that involves money? Then that's like been the more confusing question. So we've kind of been avoiding, maybe I'll say that this year we've been focusing on getting these behaviors that we've kind of avoided figuring out how the relationships and money fully fit into it. And those are very simple examples that I gave you, just to kind of paint a picture and make it clear that your situation could be more complicated than that. But that's the way that I see it. Of like, we've gotten new behaviors this year. We've done quite well at adopting these, more passion, more emotion, more instinct, all of that. Very good. And that's going to get us into a new and better experience of life, but we haven't fully figured out how to integrate relationships and money into that because most of this year we haven't been focusing on that and we've been trying to do things that don't involve relationships and money. Okay. The other thing I want to note is that now is the time. Now is the time to figure out the relationships and money and to figure out how to factor that in. Why? Well, because relationships and money are a part of life. We can't just do our own thing forever, just be alone. I mean, maybe we could, but relationships and money are a natural part of life. We need those things to help us in our experience, accomplish things and whatever, so we haven't really worked those out. And now is the time to do that because we need those things to come together to create more of a whole and integrated and complete experience within our lives. Not only do we need to work these out because they're a part of life, we can't just ignore relationships and money forever. We need these things to kind of live and to make things happen in our lives. But also too, because this is going to help us more fully enter a new and better experience of life. Okay. Because the new behaviors are going to help us enter a new experience in life. But if we're only doing these new behaviors sometimes when it's just us, but not all the time when it involves relationships and money, or if we're doing it, maybe to put another, all the time when we're alone, but not really much of the time when we're with relationships and money, then that's going to create an issue, and that's still going to keep us stuck. And if we fully want to enter a new experience of life, we need to, yes, do these new behaviors, but we need to do them with relationships and money, okay, to extend them to that area of our life as well, and to figure out how to bring them together, okay? And that's what we're trying to figure out here around this full moon in Gemini. Another thing that I want to note about that is that I also believe, especially if you watch my horoscope for the new moon in Scorpio about 2 weeks ago, that I believe that at that new moon in Scorpio that we did get clarity when Mercury was conjunct the sun, about the relationships and money, and about how we might need to, how exactly, maybe I'll use that word, how exactly we might need to adjust relationships and money in order to fit them into this new experience, okay? But even though I think that we know we need to figure out relationships and money now, and we did get clarity, especially 2 weeks ago, about how to do it, at this full moon in Gemini, there's a hesitation around it of not fully acting on the clarity that we have, not fully acting on the clarity that we have about relationships and money, to actually fix and adjust and integrate those things into our new behaviors and into our experience. We are not going all the way, and we're hesitating from fully having the conversations, from fully making the adjustments, from fully saying the thing, from fully doing the thing that's really needed in order to get us to that different and better place, okay? I think that's what's really going on. What else do I want to say about that? And I have a few thoughts. That's what's going on. We're not going all the way in on it, and we're hesitating. I also want to note too that that's creating confusion. That's creating confusion. That's creating indecision in our lives. Okay, at this full moon, it's not because we're actually confused. I think I'm going to go that route. It's not. I don't think it's because we're actually confused. I don't think it's because we're actually indecisive. I think 2 weeks ago we got confirmation. We got clarity about what needs to be done with relationships and money. So I don't think we're confused because we're actually confused about what to do with relationships and money. I think we feel confused at this full moon in Gemini, but not because we're actually confused. It's because we're hesitating. You know, sometimes when you know what you need to do and then you don't do it and then nothing changes, you get confused because you're like, why is nothing changing? I thought, this to me is what's happening here. We know we need to adjust relationships and money to integrate them into our new behaviors and new experience of life in order to finally move into this different experience. And we have the crystal clarity about what exactly needs to be done with relationships and money in order to do it, but we're not doing it, or at least not doing it all the way to the very end, which is making us feel confused and indecisive. Not because we're actually confused. We have the clarity, but because we're not doing what needs to be done. We're not finishing something until the very end. Okay, that's creating the issue. Okay, why now are we hesitating? Why now are we hesitating? And why now are we not finishing the things that need to be done? Okay, now I'm going to give you a few reasons, which is mostly that that skip step here that's going on with the nodes. I think part of it is because of the Virgo. Virgo has a lot to do with hard work, the dirty work that no one wants to do. Sometimes like it's put into Virgo here. So I think there's fixing these things with relationships and money may require some work or some effort that maybe we don't want to do, right? So that's one of the reasons why we're not finishing this stuff, right? Maybe it's a money thing, right? We need to find another job. Sometimes Virgo has to do with the job too. We need to find another job. We need to work things out with the job, or we need to do a lot of work in order to create a new source of money, right? Like there's something along those lines that we just don't want to do. That I think is holding us back. Not only what's holding us back from finishing this thing is that, but I think Virgo to me can also as well be about hard conversations as well. And the real conversations, like about the nitty gritty, not like the lighthearted conversations, like Gemini can be kind of flighty and like this and then that, but Virgo is going to hone right in and be like, what the exact details, what exactly is going on here? Can this exactly work or can it not? And is going to be a little more particular. So I think we're also avoiding having not just any type of conversations. I think we're having conversations. We're avoiding having the real conversations, the hard conversations, the detailed conversations, getting to the nitty gritty about the things that it is that we need. And also avoiding as well, planning. Maybe there is some sort of plan or strategy that's going to need to be followed, in order to do all these steps in order to get where you need to go. We're avoiding that. Okay. Another reason why we're having this where we're hesitating and not doing what we need to do, which is creating confusion, even though we're not confused, is going to be the Pisces stuff. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. It's about the final goodbye. Maybe even Scorpio also is about permanent change as well. It's about the final goodbye. It's about finally letting go of something forever, or for a very, 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 very long time. I think we're afraid of making endings, of letting things go, of drawing firm lines in the sand to leave something behind. I think that we're afraid of doing that, or we don't want to do that. That's happening. I think there's also a fear around trusting our intuition with the Pisces. Maybe we're worried that our intuition isn't going to work or is going to lead us astray if we follow it another time. I think that maybe there's also some fear around like how other people might respond with the Pisces being about compassion. Are other people going to be compassionate or not? Or maybe we're afraid that our situations might require us to be a little more tender than maybe we might like in order to resolve these things. So I think there are some things there that's also going on that's hard, that's in the way. Okay. Now, is this happening because we're just not good people and we're just irresponsible? No. Okay. A lot of times when you get squares to the nose, it's because of some sort of trauma that this occurs. Squares to the nose just don't happen for funsies. They usually happen because there's something from the past that was traumatic that makes us not want to do these things. Okay. And what could that be? Well, let's look at the South Node in Virgo, for instance, especially with Pluto and Capricorn. I know Pluto's no longer in Capricorn, I'm aware, okay? But it's been there for a very, very long time prior to entering Aquarius, which it just recently did. And Capricorn is like it can create this over tendency to be responsible and serious and work. So a big part of the reason why we might not want to do the Virgo, which is the hard work is because we've been doing this. We've been doing hard work for many years since Pluto was in Capricorn. And where did that get us? It got us to a life we didn't like. So why do we feel as though doing more hard work is going to help us now when it didn't before, and when it created a whole bunch of issues? The hard work created health issues and other problems and things of that sort. So we're not just trying to avoid doing the hard work because we're lazy SOBs we're not doing the hard work because we did the hard work for so many years and it did not pay off. So why do we feel like doing more hard work now is going to work, which is making us not want to do it? Not only that, but with Pluto and Capricorn for a long time, Capricorn can be kind of harsh, right? It's ruled by Saturn, very stern, so maybe also we felt as though when we did have conversations, going back to the Virgo, detailed specific conversations in the past few years, that they weren't met with an open heart, that they weren't met with understanding, that whenever we tried to have the smallest conversation with someone about the smallest little issue that we had, that it turned into a big freaking issue. Okay, that was a huge emergency. To me, Capricorn can be emergencies. So if every time we brought up an issue the past however long, decade or whatever, since Pluto was in Capricorn, I think it was 2008, it turned into a big issue. Why would we feel comfortable speaking up now to address things with relationships and with them going on? We don't. Why we don't? We don't, because we have trauma from the little times we did speak up with our partner or with someone in our lives until it turned into a big issue. So we're traumatized that it might turn into that again. Okay. So I think there's some of that, that's going on. And then let's get the other way, the Pisces, right? The North Node in Pisces is a lot about trusting our intuition, right? And we're not doing that as much because that's part of the skip step dealy. Why might we not be trusting our intuition? Well, you can take this back to the Pluto and Capricorn again. I think a lot of things, I'm an evolutionary astrologer, so like almost everything comes back to Pluto in the chart with me. But in Capricorn, Capricorn is about logic and practicality. Pluto can bring too much of it. It's like every time we tried to honor our intuition, it was shut down, or we were told it wasn't right, or it wasn't good, or the other people in our life didn't like it. So it's like, why would we want to trust our intuition now? Pisces is also about compassion. And we might want to be compassionate, but why would we be compassionate with the Pluto and Capricorn? Again, Capricorn's harsh and stern. If every time we were kind before, someone took advantage of our kindness, when Pluto was in Capricorn and twisted it into something that it wasn't. Why would we want to be compassionate now towards the other people? You know, here when it comes to releasing the past, Pisces is a lot about releasing the past, is a lot about our emotions. You know, with Pluto in Capricorn, you know, it's like hard to release the past as well, because Capricorn can indicate things that are more stuck, more around in your life. Maybe every time you tried to release the past, it didn't. You know, you just, maybe every time you tried to end something before, it just didn't. You tried to end something with money, you tried to end something with a relationship, it just didn't. So why would it work now? Why would it work now? Why would it work this time? You know, and maybe there's some of that. Maybe there's even some difficulty there, you know, worry about the emotions. There's something in regards to that too, of like releasing the past, and because something was going on in your life for a very, very long time. You know, sometimes when something hard is going on in your life for a while, with the Capricorn, you get attached to what is that, like Stockholm syndrome or something? I'm not sure, but you get attached to it. So there can also be this thing too of like, I'm afraid to release the past because I'm just so used to this bad thing happening in my life with relationships and money that like, who would I be without it? So there's the trauma, or the trauma bonding, like kind of going on between the relationships and the money and the negative stuff that like is this loop that's happening that also might be making it more difficult to make a firm decision to release these things from the past as well. So that's another thing that I want to know, is that, yeah, we got to fix these things with relationships and money now, and figure out how to integrate them into a new experience of life that's more passionate and more based on our emotions and our intuition. And I think we have crystal clarity about how to do it, but we're not doing it fully. We're doing it a little bit. We're not doing it fully to figure all of this out and integrate this in, and are hesitating, which is causing confusion. Not because we're actually confused, but just because we're hesitating. And the reason why we're hesitating is because we're not doing the work, the hard work, the dirty work that's needed to fully fix these things and have the hard conversations, and to be compassionate to yourselves and others while you work this out and listen to your intuition and make the firm decisions to leave some things in the past behind and let it go for once and for all. And the reason why we're not doing those things is not because we're lazy, it's because of trauma. Because we tried to work so hard in the past and it got us nowhere, because every time we brought up a little tiny concern with someone that was important to us, it turned into a 5-alarm fire and a huge emergency, you know, and because every time we tried to be kind, it was taken advantage of. And because we're just so used to these bad experiences, we don't know who we are without it anymore. We don't want to let go, you know, or trauma bonded to it, right? It's the trauma that is making a lot of this happen. Okay. Not only that, but to give you the other point with the Mars and Sag, right? The Mars, and another thing that we want to do, because we've got all this trauma that we're avoiding, is it's making us want to zone out. You know how sometimes when there's something really difficult that's gone on in your life and you just don't want to focus on it, or sometimes you'll forget about it. Like sometimes when something really bad happened in your past, you'll forget that it was even a memory, because you'll want to tune it out. That can happen in certain instances. And I feel like with the Mars and Sag square, the Saturn and Pisces, that's what we're doing at this full moon in Gemini. We're like, it's just so much trauma from the past to fix these things, to fully fix these things, that I just want to forget about it. I want to pretend it's not there. I want to pretend these things didn't happen to me. I want to ignore that I need to fix this stuff, you know, and I want to focus on other stuff, the brighter side of life, the hopeful side, only the positives. So with the Sag, looking on the bright side, I only want to focus on the positives. I don't want to focus on any of the negative stuff. I don't want to deal with any of this challenge, you know, that's going on, that's causing us to overlook things. So are you understanding how this full moon is playing out? Gotta resolve the stuff with relationships and money and integrate it into a new approach. We do know how to do it, but we just don't want to do it. And we're hesitating, which is creating confusion when we're not confused. Okay. And the reason why we don't want to do it is because it's going to require a lot of hard work and hard conversations, and us to make firm decisions to let go of things. And there's just so much trauma surrounding that. And because we don't want to deal with that trauma and do all of that, we're then trying to pretend that none of this is happening and that everything is fine, and ignoring it all and just trying to focus on good things, happy stuff, pleasure in the moment, you know, whatever that is. That's not resolving the issue. That's not resolving a big elephant in the room here. There's like a big issue that's like not being resolved. Okay. That's causing us to stagnate, because we're not doing the one thing that would get us unstuck. We're not doing the one thing that would cause us not to stagnate and to have us move forward, okay, in the way that we need. Okay. And how do we resolve that? Okay, now to kind of switch over to that, how do we resolve that? Well, we consciously choose to do the things we don't want to do, which is to have the hard conversations with people, to do the hard work, to fix relationships or to fix money situations. We make the firm decisions, okay? Consciously choose to let things go, okay? We try to be compassionate, to ourselves in the process, and we trust our intuition. It's to consciously choose to do that, okay? And to maybe also with the Pisces to do some healing, in order to make that happen, to do some inner healing work so that we can do the hard work, so that we can have the hard conversations, so that we can overcome the past, and maybe even to have faith that this time will be different, because Pisces can be about faith, that this time will be different, that this time we can have a hard conversation with a relationship and we can do it differently, and it will manifest differently than it did, and we'll get a different result because we've learned and we've grown and things are different now, to have the trust and faith that will occur as well. So that's how you resolve this situation. You consciously choose to do the hard thing you don't want to do, have the hard conversations, and make the firm decisions to release the past and to let it go and to trust your intuition and to have faith it's going to work and do the inner healing in order to make that possible. Okay, I hope that's clear. Another thing that I want to note as well is that once that occurs, once this choice is made and once that occurs, there's something good on the other side of it. There's something good on the other side of it that's meant to happen that's just covered up really by our own hesitation, which is caused by trauma. Right? There's a good reason for it, but it's caused by that. And sorry, before I say that, I want to note this hesitation that I'm talking about is more recent, right? The reason why we didn't integrate relationships and money into this new approach earlier in the year is because it just wasn't time, okay? We needed to get to Libra season, and maybe we needed Saturn to back out of Aries for a minute, okay? So that wasn't hesitation until like the first half of the year, until the new moon in Libra. That was just normal, but we've been hesitating to fully go all in to fix things since the new moon in Libra, and especially that new moon in Scorpio 2 weeks ago. Okay, so keep that in mind. The hesitation is not this whole year type of thing. It's just more recent, like the past 2 to 6 weeks or something. Okay, but what I was about to say is that once we fix this hesitation and we go all in to finally resolve these issues with relationships and money, there's something very good that's trying to emerge. What is it that's trying to emerge? Well, we've got the Mars in Sag. To me, Sagittarius and the Sun's in Sag, right, is a lot about new things, different things, better things, being Jupiter ruled. So that's new, different, and better experience of life that we've been trying to get to for quite some time. To me, Sagittarius is also more passionate, more hopeful, more excitement about life, maybe even more drive and motivation with the Mars. Mars can sometimes have a lot more purpose. So on the other side is a lot more purpose, a lot more motivation, drive, better experiences. Jupiter is also in Cancer in a trine with, Mercury. This is an expansive energy, expansive emotions or new emotions, different emotions, feeling very differently about your life. This can also be wisdom, since Sagittarius and Jupiter are involved, which are correlated, more wisdom and understanding about your life, about why things happen in the way they had to happen, about why you had to go through what you had to go through, about what it all means. Sagittarius is about that, how we make meaning out of our lives. So on the other side of this, you're going to get that new, different, and better experience, more passion, more motivation, more drive, more understanding and meaning of why things happened in your life. Gemini, right? And so too is Sagittarius, mutable sign. This is more flexibility, more ease in your life, where you can do what you want to do when you want to do it. It's not a big deal. It's simple. You can just make it happen. You're also going to get more ease of thought and communication, easier of thinking and communicating things. I think you're also going to get to a more playful feeling and a more childlike feeling as well, with Gemini being symbolized by two twin boys. I think there's that. There's like a much better, lighter feeling on the other side of this, of like, oh, the worst is over. After you make this decision, it's like the worst is over and I'm home free. I'm finally home free to like embrace a new experience and to have more fun, to have more ease and be more playful, and to better understand what it all was for and what it all happened, why it all happened the way it did. And another thing too, and this is really where I wanted to go with this full moon in Gemini, but clearly the aspects, right? I mean, I had to obviously talk about this square to the nodal axis because we're not really feeling the Gemini, but Gemini, it to me is a very youthful energy. Of course, being towards the beginning of the zodiac, to me, these are more youthful, but of course, Gemini with the symbol of the twin boys, Castor and Pollux, whatever, there. And it also has to do with learning things, but also unlearning, because to me, Gemini is very open-minded and can see things in a lot of different ways and a lot of different perspectives and isn't dogmatic about its knowledge and information and beliefs. So another thing that I think is really trying to emerge, and I think this to me is like the most important thing, is a more childlike feeling in life, a more playful, where we forget. Maybe you don't want to say that, forgetting. Because when you're open-minded and you're not dogmatic, you're okay with like forgetting one fact in favor of another fact that's more true. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm hoping that the correlation is becoming clear of like Gemini is so open-minded that it's okay with forgetting one thought in favor of another that's better for the situation. And so I think what's trying to emerge with the full moon in Gemini is a sense of forgetting the hardships of the past and forgetting how hard it was and how difficult it was, or if not forgetting, because sometimes we don't always forget, just not having the emotional sting of the past and of seeing it as more of a curiosity. That's another Gemini word, instead of a challenge. Which a lot of times happens when you're childlike. When you're youthful and you're childlike, you don't have all this baggage from the past of like, this happened to me and this was sad and all of that. And you don't have all this dogma that weighs you down. It's like every day is like a new adventure to learn something new and you're a blank slate. And so I think that that's really what's trying to emerge at the end of this full moon in Gemini, is within us a feeling of forgetting the hardships of the past and becoming like born anew, or becoming a child again, where every day is just an exciting adventure, where we can't wait to try new things and learn new things, and where we're just a blank slate open to what possibly could occur. Okay. And why is that necessary? Maybe to think of that, why is that necessary? Well, we're trying to move into a new, different, and better experience of life since 2020 that I've been talking about for a very long time. And, if you're trying to do something new that you've never done before, you need to have the mindset of a child a lot of times, to see the world through the eyes of a child for the first time, because children are more, right? Their brains are more malleable. They're more open to new experiences, more flexible. There's something like that needs to go on. If we want to have new experiences, we need to start to see our life through the eyes of a newborn, again, and to have that playfulness and to kind of forget the challenges of the past. Because if we keep remembering the challenges of the past and feeling that intense emotional gnawing of it, then it's going to stop us from doing the things we want to do. It's going to stop us from doing the new things, because every time we try to do a new thing, we're going to be worried about, oh, well, this thing happened in the past, and we're going to have that emotional tension around it. So there's another theme that's trying to emerge at this full moon in Gemini of like, once you resolve this issue, we have to do that first. Once you resolve this stuff with relationships and money and factor it into a new experience, then there's a need to like forget to a certain extent, right? Especially the emotional baggage, the emotional import of the challenging stuff of the past, and to be more open to new experiences and more hopeful of new things that can occur and of new things that will happen, to go back and to see the world with the eyes of a child and not with the eyes of like a jaded person who's been down and out. Okay. That I think is very important. What else do I want to say about that? Now, are there going to be, right? We're going to get into a new, different, and better experience of life very soon. I think March is probably when I feel good about that finally occurring, March of next year. And then I actually like next astrological year a lot, from April of 2026 to April of 2027 as being like one of the best years we've had in a very long time, where things are just happening easier, more quickly. It's a lot more fun. There's a lot more progress and momentum, and not a lot of, hard emotional things to work out. So I actually think that we're going into a very good year after this. One of the best that we've had, especially since 2020, maybe even since 2018. But with that being said, there are eventually going to be challenging things that are eventually going to happen, maybe around 2030. I haven't looked too much into it, but I know there's something coming after the Pluto North Node conjunction. So I think around 2030, there are going to be some more challenges that we're going to run into. And obviously, like this is the way that life is anyways. But another thing I want to note is that it doesn't help to focus on the challenges at the beginning. Okay. Because if you focus on the challenges at the beginning, then you're never really going to start because there's always going to be something that's holding you back. So there's also a theme there of like, if we want to get a new experience of life, we have to see the world with new eyes and we have to be more open to things and not so jaded. And in order to do it so that we don't recreate the same experiences, and we kind of have to be blind to the challenges down the road so that we can start. So that we can start again. Because if we knew every bad thing that was going to happen to us, we may never begin. We may never do what we need to do. So there's a level of forgetting and being young again that's needed. And that reminds me back to the tarot. Of course, I don't know what card we're going to pull today, but the Fool. The Fool is the first card of the tarot. And the first card of the tarot, the Fool, is about beginning a new adventure, beginning a new journey that the rest of the tarot is all about. And it's funny that the first card of the tarot is called the Fool and not the Adventurer or the Traveler. Right? The Fool. And to me, the Fool energy relates a little bit to Gemini because Gemini is playful. And Gemini also correlates to what the Greek god Hermes. And Hermes was a bit of a trickster. He liked to play tricks on the other gods, Olympian gods, which they didn't really like too much. So there can be like a little bit of like a foolish, like playful energy with Gemini. And it's funny that the first card of the tarot, even though I know it doesn't correlate to Gemini in the tarot, but I'm making my own connections here. But I think sometimes in order to begin a new journey, you have to be a little foolish. Sometimes in order to begin a new journey, you have to not see certain things. You have to be a little playful or else you would never begin, you know? When I think the symbol of the Fool in the tarot is like a man walking off a cliff because he doesn't know what he's about to get into. But that's a good thing. We need to develop that kind of playful, youthful mindset of like, what could go wrong? Everything's going to be fine. We're fine again, in order to move forward, which is what we're really trying to get to. So also keep that in mind as well. We got to resolve these things from the past first, okay? With the relationships and money, and figure out how to factor the relationships and money in, but and make the firm decisions, right, in order to do that, and the hard work and the hard conversations and release the past and all of that. Okay. But once that happens, new, different, and better experiences, more wisdom about what you went through and why, and a lighter childlike feeling. That's what we need to get to. Childlike feeling where we've forgotten all of the hardships of the past, or at least the emotional import of these hard challenges of the past, and where we feel more open to new experiences, like a blank slate, ready for whatever life will throw at us with more of that excitement and motivation. Okay. That's needed. All right. Anything else? Sure. Do I want to give a few examples of what this could look like? Yeah, I mean, I do think a lot of you, obviously, relationships are a big thing with the Scorpio going on. Yeah, I think maybe some of you for a while have been in a relationship with a person, like a committed relationship, but you haven't known whether to end that relationship or not, if it's really meant for you. And so what you've been doing is you've just been in that relationship, but focusing on yourself. I'm just going to do my own thing. I'm going to do what I can control. I'm going to do what makes me happy, whatever that is, whenever I want to do it, and try not to ruffle any feathers with my partner. Well, maybe what is going on right now is that now you have to address something with your partner. Now you're realizing I can't go on forever just like doing what I want without knowing if my partner's on board, because that doesn't feel right. Maybe there's some arguments going on, right? And so now you realize I have to figure out, can I do what I want to do and what I've been doing the past few months with my partner? Does my partner like it or not? Does my partner really approve of what I'm doing or not? Will my partner do what I'm doing with me? Like, can we do it together, right? Maybe you're now need to figure that out. And maybe some of you have started talking about these things with your partner, but you're avoiding going all the way in to have the full conversations because you're worried that maybe your partner's going to say, no, like, I don't like what you're doing. I don't want to do it. I don't want this to happen in this way. So you're tiptoeing around it and not really putting in the effort in to kind of have that conversation. And maybe you're also afraid to end the relationship if that's what it comes to, which it will for some of you. You're afraid to fully end that relationship. So you're also avoiding having the conversation to kind of work that out or to make the plans about how the two of you could work together if that is an option. Okay. So I think there's a big thing there, Can the both of you go to the gym together at 4 a.m. in the morning? Or does it really annoy the other person that you wake up for, right? It's like things like this that can go on. That I think can be a big deal. I mean, this could also apply to other relationships, that aren't romantic or partners, right? This could also be, realtors or doctors, things of that sort. Maybe you've had a doctor that you've been consulting with, and maybe your doctor's been giving you some advice, but maybe you've been doing more of your own thing with the advice because you don't know about your doctor's advice, and you've kind of just been tiptoeing around it. And maybe now you and your doctor are realizing that you're not taking the doctor's advice, and the doctor realizing you're not taking their advice. And there needs to be a talk about this, because what's the point? What's the point of interacting if there's nothing going on here? So there could be something like that that's being avoided. Maybe it's with a realtor. Maybe you're trying to sell a home and the home won't sell, and you've been trying to maybe just hope it'll work or do it on your own or whatever. Well, maybe now there needs to be some sort of conversation with the realtor in order to resolve that. And maybe you already did have some kind of conversation with the realtor, but maybe you need more of it, more and more planning and more strategy to kind of figure that out there, kind of in that regard, right? Or maybe this is a business partner, maybe there's a business going on and you feel like the business should be one way and your partner feels like it should be another. And you've been kind of doing your own thing with the business on your own as much as you can. And maybe now you're realizing you can't avoid it. You have to talk to the business partner about what you're going to do with the business and if it can work. And there needs to be a final decision made about if you can stay in the business together, or if you need to buy the other person out, right? There's something like that might need to go on here. Or this could be more about money. Maybe there's something with your job that's going on that you don't like at work or with your boss. And maybe the way to resolve that conflict, what you've been doing is you've been trying to do your own thing at work and just lay low and tend to your own business or whatever. And whether your boss liked it or not, and maybe now you're realizing you can't keep doing that. Your boss and you aren't on the same page, and now you need to have a conversation about whether or not you and your boss truly can get on the same page with work, or whether, someone needs to leave the job, so it could be something like that. Or maybe it's been a thing too, where some of you have been wanting to need a new job. Maybe some of you need a new job. Okay. And, but what you've been doing is maybe you've been avoiding getting the new job altogether because you've been afraid to make the decision to leave the old job behind that now you might have to make. Or maybe you've been trying to get a new job, but you've just been kind of like looking a little bit, not full, like whatever you can to get a new job that you might be interested in. But you haven't really fully committed to that. And there's something about like, now you have to finally make a decision. Are you going to leave the job, or are you going to stay? Are you going to get to another job or not? And you really need to leave the old behind. There's something about leaving the old behind in order to move on. Okay. Right. Could be, maybe this is a money source. Maybe some of you are business owners and you're trying to fix things with the money in your business, and maybe for this year, you've been trying to figure a lot of things out, right? Maybe learn a lot of things about money or whatever it is that you needed, but for some reason, the money still isn't fixed. And what may need to happen now is that you may need to do some hard work to cultivate a new money source, and put in the time and the effort and the long days in order to get that new money source and make it a reality, instead of just like waiting it out and tuning it out and seeing what happens, so it could be an example like that as well. But the key here is that there's something with relationships and money that cannot be avoided. It has to be focused on now, and there has to be a final decision surrounding it so that the issue does not come back. Because if you don't make the decision, it's not going to happen, right? And there's some of you that, last example made me think about it. There's some of you that may want to, I'm just going to wait till the decision makes itself. Don't wait until the decision makes itself, or else the decision is never going to get made. You have to make it. You have to have the hard conversations. You have to do the hard work. You have to make the decision, to make the conclusion. You have to make the closure. You have to make it yourself. Okay. Instead of waiting for it to happen. Okay. So I think that's what I'm going to say there. Now let's go ahead and let's look at your inside degrees. So we're going to pull those up. Did I have them? Okay. I think I have them up over here. We do. This full moon is at 13 degrees Gemini. So let's scroll back over here. Here we are. But the planets are in motion. So I think 12, 13, and 14 can all be relevant. So we're going to take a look at those. The inside degrees were not written by me, but they were written by someone else named Elias Lonsdale, who channeled the meanings of each of the degrees from spirit, who I think can be insightful. So we're going to look at that. We've got Gemini 12. This is my natal moon, by the way. I'm also a Pisces North Node. But here we are, outrageous infinities of riches to share, accessing these in stages, always having more than enough, and then still having more again. Good fortune. Okay, so this means to remember the full moon in Gemini is where we're at, but we're not able to tap into the Gemini in the way that we might like. So this to me is more about what's possible on the other side of all of this. And what's possible on the other side of all of this is good fortune, always having more than enough and then still having more again. Okay, if that doesn't give you something to look forward to, I don't know what does. This can indicate money. Okay, good things with money, right? The fortune to me skews more money, but I suppose could also indicate relationships. Like there's going to be good things with relationships, but we just have to get through this first. You just have to make the firm decision, right? You can't get these good things without making a decision, without making a choice. Okay, without doing some work or effort. You know, you got to do that and then you'll get here. Okay, it says prosperity outside and in. You bear gifts and talents, treasures and marvels, multidimensional, simultaneous, celebratory. Oh, I like that. Also something to celebrate. On the other side, a lot of gifts and talents and treasures. Yeah, this is so nice. Expanding to meet the need, tapping the universal supply, in touch with the boundlessness of existence. All of this comes so naturally and effortlessly to you that the challenge is to value it, to honor it, to realize what is happening. Okay. This to me, again, does not quite feel like we're ready for that at this full moon in Gemini. This to me feels more like next year. So next year, I think it's going to be a good year. A lot of good stuff. You know, the boundlessness of existence, everything happening more naturally, more effortlessly, more easily. This is the vision. This is the of what is to come, okay, to inspire you. It says being this way is so fertile with promise and hope that it can dissipate into schemes or it can come back to life as a real thing of you being granted the orchestrator, coordinator, mediator gift, being offered by spirit, whatever you need to open up futures and expand possibilities wherever you go. Okay, still feels like next year. Maybe that's an interesting thing to note for next year, that it could dissipate into schemes. But to me, this is a good thing, that on the other side of these hard decisions, and maybe the reason why this is coming up is because some of you need encouragement to do these things. Maybe on the other side of these hard conversations and these hard decisions and this hard work is so much abundance than you can even imagine. You know, a whole bunch more money than you can even imagine, a whole much better relationship than you can even imagine. Maybe there's a lot of partners out there that want your attention. You know, there's a lot of that going, and things are going to happen so natural and so easily that it'll just feel normal. Okay, let's go to Gemini 13. It says stationed in isolate containment to cultivate gifts, virtues, talents, and special offerings, generously endowed with timing and grace to preserve and maintain worlds apart. You are directed from within to divulge nothing and remain in telepathic wavelength beyond words. Okay. Inside there, you become conversant with extraordinary spheres and are held in a purity of protection and veiling, a kind of otherness which rarely is seen for what it is. So there's something about this that is a lot about to me, that I get from this. It's not about preparing internally and inner healing and inner knowledge and being protected. And maybe that's also another message of encouragement for some of you. Some of you are so afraid to have the hard conversation and make the hard decision. But if you just have the hard conversation and make the hard decision, you're going to be protected. And, you know, and it's going to weirdly work out. And I think it is, in a way that it is going to work for all, or that all people are going to be at peace with, because I think a lot of these things that have gone on with relationships and money have gone on for a long time. So I think there's going to be a common ground between you and the money situation or whatever that's going to work out better. So there's a thought there, especially with these degrees being so positive, as like, there's something very good going on here. It's going to work out better than you expected. It may feel hard to do the hard work or to have the hard conversation or make the hard decision or whatever, but look at it. It's going to work out very, very well. Another thought, this is like, you have to listen to your inner world. You know, it says you are directed from within. You have to listen to your intuition. You have to listen to your emotions to guide you forward, and trust in those, because those are going to give you more of the accurate insights about and read on what to do. It says you extrovert into apparent display, and meanwhile keep everything essential for later, a perfect arrangement for very special fosterings and streams. Okay. This to me also indicates that duality still of like there's a little bit at this full moon in Gemini of like partially resolving what needs to be resolved, but partially not. Okay. With the, yeah. And there's a need to externally have the hard conversations while internally knowing and feeling that good things are on the way. So maybe there's a thought about that of like the duality. There's a need to know that, sure, maybe some conversations are hard in the physical, but on the other side, it's a good thing. Okay. And then let's look at 14. It says laws are made to be broken. Limitations are kept in place so that those who are not ready to go through radical changes in evolution will be able to locate themselves. I love that. Um, since I'm not big on rules, I love this. But then there are those who cut through every limitation, break every law by the sheer power of their inner gaze, their presence, their magical will. When they cut loose, worlds that have been kept apart fled together. This is a force of awareness that seeks to bridge, to mediate, to connect, to bear messages back and forth. You know, when I see the word law here, you know, I would interpret it maybe differently for a different full moon, but law to me, I'm going to associate with the laws of the old life, of the way we used to live life. Okay. And I think what this is saying is that once we make these decisions and have these hard conversations and whatnot, that the old law is going to break and a new law is going to be formed. You know, maybe I'm thinking more, you know, like this is not the right way to put it, but I'm like, to maybe give you an example for some of you, like the Old Testament versus the New Testament. Like when Jesus came, which is the beginning of the New Testament, he kind of erased all the laws of the Old Testament. It was like a new thing was happening. And so I'm feeling like once we make these hard decisions and have these hard conversations, it's like the old law of the old life is being broken, and the new law of the new life is going to be formed, is going to be created, you know, and there's going to be something else that will occur. Okay. Another thing that this makes me think as well is like, because it says limitations are kept in place so that those who are not ready to go through radical changes in evolution. So another thought this gives me too, especially with the Gemini being about duality and the twos, is like not everyone is going to be ready to go into this new experience. It's just the way that life is. You know, not everyone is going to have done the work to get a new and better experience. And those people may still be subject to the old ways of doing things because they haven't learned and grown and changed. That's happening. Okay. So there may be some people that won't. Now, I wouldn't necessarily be worried about you all as those people, because if you're watching this video, you're probably more spiritually inclined, but it definitely seems like those who may not be the most spiritually inclined might have might not get to where they need to go here. But Gemini is okay with that duality. Gemini is okay with knowing that there are some people in life who are going to learn their lessons and who have really been making hard to make changes and are going to have different experiences. And there are some people who haven't. And this is the way life is, light and dark, you know, up and down, you know, like the law of opposites. This is also like, speaking of laws, like the law of the universe is the law of opposites. You know, there's always going to be these two opposite things that are always going to occur, even though I believe that the majority of people, more people than not, are ready to move into this different experience, right? Even though there may be some that aren't ready, the majority of us as a collective, most of the collective is ready to move on. Okay. Okay, and most of the collective is raising their awareness, right? Look at this. This is a force of awareness that seeks to bridge, to mediate, to connect, to bear messages back and forth. A mission or great task is involved to let the future flood through and repolarize the fractured world toward wholeness. Another thing that makes me think too is that the people who are ready to evolve and to get this new, different, and better experience of life, which I think is the majority of the collective, their task is then to influence the others who aren't ready, is to influence the others who aren't ready, right? To flood through and to repolarize the others who aren't ready and to teach them, right? To all come together. Okay. A sensibility made up of equal parts daring and skill. The daring is afraid of nothing and nobody. The skill embodies the daring in action, a perfect combination to catalyze and spark and make inevitable the cosmic forces, bringing their imprint to bear upon the outer physical existence, just as though that is what we do around here, and why not? Yeah. I like that. Catalyze, bringing people together, and yeah, I think I like that a lot. Is there anything else I wanted to look at? I'm just going to look at something very briefly for a minute. Let's see. What's 13? No, no, no. Let's stick with the Gemini. Okay, I was going to look at the nodes, their degrees, but I'm like, oh, then I'd have to look at Virgo too. So no, I think we're going to go just with the Gemini. I think we're going to go just with the Gemini of a lot of good things on the other side, a lot of gifts, prosperity, good fortune. You know, we just have to get through this first and trust that we're going to be safe and protected in the process, which I think that we are as we do these hard things. And then once we get on the other side, we're then eventually going to have to help everyone else come along to get to this new experience, because everyone may not make it through this first window. And I think maybe another thought on that, helping everyone come along together on this new experience feels more 2027, 2028. Next year is more about us just enjoying where we are first. And then we'll focus on bringing other people along on the journey who missed out or who are late. As well. But okay, I think that's all I'm going to say there. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull your card. So let's do that. All right, your card for this full moon in Gemini is, which way do I have the deck? Okay, it looks like I did mix it up. The Two of Pentacles reversed, and then at the bottom of the deck we've got the Six of Cups upright. Definitely getting, the Six of Cups is about the past, which is interesting because there's something about releasing the past and letting the past go. And the Two of Pentacles is about balance, twos are, and this is reversed. So I'm getting a sense of like something being on the balance being off, where maybe we're tilted a little bit too much towards the past. That's where I am here. We're holding a little too closely the past, and not seeing it in the proper perspective, which I think a lot of you, this is holding on to old relationships, holding on to old money situations, old jobs. Maybe this is even holding on to an old version of yourself or sense of self. I think some of you are holding on to it a little too much and using it as a crutch when you really need to be letting it go. That's happening, and you're not balancing the duality, right, with the twos as well. You're not balancing that with the new experiences that you might need. So that's my thought. Some of you are holding on too much to the past or putting too much weight in the past versions of you, relationships, money, and not letting yourself fully take that leap into the new. And you need to rebalance more towards the new. Okay, another thought that's coming here as well, right? When it comes to the past is like, I do think that there is a need for a lot of you to let the past go and to make a firm decision to end something. But if it's not that, then there's something too about like, right, seeing the past in the proper perspective is like we can see something good that happened in the past without it holding us back, without it defining us. And the same with the bad. We can see that something bad happened in the past without us holding it back and without it defining us as well. Because maybe that's part of the reason why some of you are stuck in the past and are holding on to it too tightly, is because maybe some of you are like, oh, this thing happened in the past and like we had some good moments with my job. I had some good moments with my partner. I don't want to let it go. And maybe that some of you need to realize you can end a relationship with your partner, but you can still hold on to the good memories. You can still hold on to the good parts, right? The relationship ending doesn't mean you have to hate all the memories too, So maybe there's some sort of message around there. Or conversely, maybe some of you could, have had some bad experiences and you're like, well, I'm worried that if I get into another relationship, like it's just going to be all bad like it was before. Or if I get into another job, it's going to be all bad like it was before. And there's also a need to put that in the proper perspective, to see that just because something was bad before in the past doesn't mean that it's always going to be bad again in the future, and to kind of adjust your perspective there on that. So I think those are the things that I'm getting. Some of you are holding on a little too tightly to the past instead of letting it go or opening up room for something new to come into the picture, which is what you need, which could be connected to your perspective on the past. Okay. And you need to realize you can still love old things in your life, even if they're no longer around, and that the old things don't define your future. A new thing is going to happen. A new thing is happening, with new rules, and the old rules no longer apply. And it's going to be different from here on out. and the old things that happened under the old rules are no longer going to happen under the new rules, the new laws or whatever, so there's a need to kind of understand that and to not let your past define your future, and to draw a line in the sand, so that that can happen as well. I think, right, and to be practical about it, the Pentacles too, to be practical. Maybe there's also need to be realistic. Sometimes the Six of Cups can idolize things in the past as well. So maybe there's a need to be a little bit more realistic about what actually is going on in your situation in the past as well, that might be happening. So interesting that I got a little throat situation there. So maybe that was definitely a message for some of you that maybe some of you don't want to see your situation for what it truly is. Maybe some of you are pretending that your situation is better than it is or different than it is and have an illusion about your situation. Maybe that's part of the Mars square Saturn in Pisces. So I might get another thought here. Some of you need to see your situation more clearly for what it is instead of what you hope it would be and what you want it to be, and deal with the reality of the situation and start from there, because that as well is going to get you to where you need to go. So I think that's all I'm going to say. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like it on YouTube, subscribe to my channel. Let me know in a comment down below. Otherwise, I will see you 2 weeks from now on the next video for that new moon in the sign of Sagittarius.